chaining message sends together with the safe navigation syntax renders this series of calls safe, in the sense that the worst that will happen is we get a final result of nil. Or is it safe? I'm going to change something off screen here and then run it again. Oh look, another no method error. But I thought this was supposed to be safe. Let's look at the code that led up to this surprise.